Hey, I'm excited to be here in Ohio. We have a lot of work to do today. I'm a recovering banker. I was in banking for 25 years, senior manager. I worked in the field of analytics. So basically what that means is turning data into stories which become strategies for customers, markets, and performance. And as I was doing that, I really thought a lot about management systems, what leadership systems are effective and which are not. And so my consulting firm focuses on leadership systems and analytics. And in the last couple years, I've had the great fortune to be exposed to numerous credit union executives around the country. So the presentation that you'll see today is a fusion of best practices of great credit union leaders all over the country, as well as my own personal experiences. And if you want to read more in depth than what we're going to get today, you can go on my website, ceovelocity.com, and I write monthly for Credit Union Business and frequently contribute to Credit Union Management Qs. So today what we're going to talk about is building a high-velocity credit union. And that is one of the most important things that you can think about. So we're going to get into that. But what is velocity? Why it's important? How can it get off track? And then we're going to talk about really the three main elements of velocity: leadership, people, and systems. And by systems, I don't necessarily mean technology systems. I mean any kind of process you use to accomplish something. So it's a hiring system. It's a budgeting system. It's your finance and accounting system. It's the way that you book loans, the way you take loan applications. There are many systems in your credit union. Why is velocity so important? It is the rate at which you go in the direction of your goals and the rate at which you accomplish them. So velocity has two components, really, direction and speed. And you, as volunteers, have everything to do with that. Your management is accountable to you. And so these systems I'm going to show you today, you can adapt to your credit union and hold your management teams accountable. Velocity really is the paramount metric by which your CEO should be evaluated. Because the CEO needs to be taking your organization forward in a clear direction and at a good speed. Okay? So there are three components, as I mentioned, to velocity: leadership, people, and systems. Leadership, as I said, is direction. People and systems equate to speed. And so here are some of the functions of the various components. So leaders are responsible for values, mission, people development, culture, communication. The people side, and these are just examples, there are many more. People are responsible for member care, feedback to management, as well as innovation. And on the system side, you've got a number of systems, IT being one of them, hiring, as I said. We'll focus a little bit of time today on strategic marketing, on the strategic marketing system, just as an example. So how can velocity get off track? There really are three ways where I see credit unions slow down. And the first one is where you have strong leadership and people, but weak systems. This is the most common. So an example is everybody wants to replace their core system. They talk about their core system a lot, or they're frustrated because they can't get data out about their members or about their markets. So this is very, very common, the first one. The second one, not quite as common, strong leadership and systems, but weak people. You see this in big corporations that really dehumanize, oftentimes, not all, but some, dehumanize and really don't have strong people systems, not engaged in people development. This third one here tends to be I would say after the first one, the most common in what I see, strong people in systems, but there can be weak leadership if you get leaders who are on cruise control, right? If you get folks who have 5 years or 10 years to go, they've done all they think they can do, they might go on cruise control. And that's really demoralizing to the credit union staff. I want to give you some examples of ways in which velocity can really be slowed down. The direction and the speed with which you accomplish your goals can really be slowed down if you've got a very broad, one-size-fits-all, we're everything to everybody strategy. And it can also break down if your different divisions in your credit union aren't on the same sheet of music. So your branch system has one set of priorities, your mortgage side has a different set of priorities, and they're not working together as a team. That really inhibits velocity. Another is if your members are unaware of your full product offering, and if they haven't consolidated their full banking relationship with you. That can really slow you down in terms of getting toward your goals. And then with strategic partners, I really recommend, a lot of the vendors, the partners that you have, they service you in one way. But yet they might have a lot of different offerings that are available to you, but you only know just about a few. I recommend bringing your vendors in once a year and having a conversation with them that says, what do you do that we're not doing? How can we better utilize you? And also, what are other credit unions doing that we're not doing with you? Lastly, last velocity reducer I want to talk about is information. There are gold mines in your systems if you can extract it and know what to do about it. So gold mines in terms of your members, in terms of your underwriting process, all kinds of great information there waiting to be synthesized and utilized. And if you're not using it, you're not learning as much as you can about your members. So these are some examples of ways in which velocity can be reduced. So right now we're going to talk about the leadership aspect of velocity. And really, as I've spoken with a lot of credit union CEOs, what I've found is that there are what I call 6 guiding forces, basically, that really strong CEOs use to create velocity. The first 2 have to do with aligning their people, their teams, and creating an alignment framework. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. The next one has to do with communication. The next couple have to do with selecting and developing leaders. And then the last one has to do with expense, with creating low operating expenses. So if I had to leave you with one slide, it would be this right here. This is the most important slide that you're going to see all day. It's called the 8 Pillars of Strategic Alignment. And it brings clarity to your credit union. It gets everybody on the same page. And it starts with knowing who you are. Knowing who you are, your vision, your mission, your core values, your brand promise. Those things are set in stone, and as volunteers, you have a lot of say in that. And those don't change. The next piece is strategy. Now, strategy can change depending on market conditions, interest rates, the economy, what's going on in your locality, etc. Then we come to member needs and then the member experience. So all members are not created equal. As an analytics guy, I know that. There are different segments of members. We'll talk about them a little bit later. But each of those kinds of members have certain expectations. And those expectations are evolving in terms of the kind of experience that they're going to get with your credit union. Those expectations are higher and higher and higher as they interact with companies like Zappos and Amazon and others. And then we come to communication. We'll call this the glue. And this is your internal communication process. And I'll show you an example of that. But it's key that everybody in your credit union knows what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you're doing it. And then that leads to focused execution. If I'm on the front line serving members, I need to know what is expected of me, what's going to make the biggest impact with my members, and why I'm doing it. Focused execution. And then metrics. How are we going to measure whether or not we're achieving our mission, our vision, our brand promise? How are we going to measure whether our execution is good or not? These are the key metrics that you all can help develop. And then there's innovation. Taking what we've experienced and feeding it back through and saying, what in the world can we do better? Overhauling processes. How can the supervisory committee help better? How can we get better mortgage application rates? All kinds of things like that. Innovation really is the lifeblood of your credit union. And it comes through this system. This is a very tight leadership system. And if you develop something like this, this is kind of like the playing field that you're in. This keeps everybody on the same page, in tune with your core values. So here's an example of a communication system that one CEO uses. It's you can see that he's communicating with 4 primary groups of people. He's making sure that he communicates, him personally, communicating with all the employees, either in person or through town hall meetings or some kind of electronic format. The employees know him, they get the vision, they know he's engaged. And of course, he's very active with the board. There's that two-way communication going back and forth. Senior leadership team, critical. We're going to talk about a unified executive team. And you'll have a greater chance of having a unified executive team if you use these 8 pillars that I just talked about. And then, of course, he communicates regularly with external partners like me. So how many of y'all know that your credit union has a defined active communication system? I saw 1 hand back there. 2. It needs to be documented. It needs to not be helter-skelter. People need to know it exists because it holds that whole 8 pillars together. The next aspect in these guiding forces of credit union growth and success has to do with leadership. And if you'll notice here, we're talking about recruiting and attracting leaders. And the interesting thing about this is that functional expertise is last. What's first is people skills. So, and that really means, one CEO told me, cultural fit. Cultural fit is so key because I've got to influence, if I'm a senior leader, I've got to influence people above me, I've got to influence my peers sideways, I've got to influence people in the organization below me, and I've got to drive in such a way that people want to follow me without feeling like they've lost their independence. So people skills, cultural fit comes first. The next is conceptual thinkers. So I want people who aren't just thinking about today, but who are thinking 3 to 5 years from now, who are reading the Filene research, who are researching the fintech companies, who are thinking about what are new mortgage products that we're going to need in 5 years. What are the demographics going to look like in 3 to 5 years of my market area? Conceptual thinkers. And then functional expertise is last here. Because I can find someone over the branch system who can run a branch system. I can find a lot of those people. But can I find the people that can run the branch system that fit into my culture and who are going to be good people influencers and take me into the future? That really is the way to look for leaders. And speaking of leaders, Here's a model that within the concept of creating velocity with leaders, am I developing leaders in my credit union? Now, a lot of people, a lot of credit unions don't have these models yet, but I highly recommend them. But this came from a credit union where they have anyone above like at the VP level, they put into a leadership class. So it might be 5, 10, 20 people depending on the size of the credit union, and they take them through different classes together, as well as they give them individual coaches. So that's one way to develop leaders. And then you'll notice, though, that every layer in the credit union, all the way down to the front line, has some form of leadership development. This is critical to attracting talent and keeping it in your credit union. So what are some of the benefits of this structured leadership development? Well, employee retention is one. Continuity of your culture. If you've got a great culture, you want to be able to move it forward by training leaders on what it is. I like this one. Innovation, risk-taking, and investing decisions are made, they're taught how to make those decisions within the context of your 8 pillars framework. We're going to talk about a low overhead approach to driving innovation. Remember I said innovation is the lifeblood of your credit union. And so what we want to do is keep our costs, our employee costs, as much as we can. We want to utilize technology, automation, joint ventures with other credit unions. I know of other credit unions who are doing back office joint ventures. And so we're keeping our member acquisition costs and our cost to acquire assets low by taking these low cost approaches so that we can increase our efficiency. And once we increase our efficiency, we've got more money to invest in talent, technology, member needs, etc. So in the context of velocity, I've briefly described a system, a leadership system that can create strong direction and help you move forward. So this is not exhaustive. I told you there's going to be a lot of information. All right, let's move on to the people side of velocity. So leadership is direction. What do people provide? Starts with an S. Speed. Speed, right? Employees provide speed. And so there really are 6 ways that they do that. Through their job performance, improving it, focusing on their strengths, identifying high-value actions, overhauling processes, getting the incentives lined up with the direction of your credit union, and unleashing your thought leaders. So we'll talk about a few of those. First of all, focusing on strengths. In my experience, giving and receiving performance evaluations, we say, you did great on these 4 things, but in these other 4 things, you weren't so good. So we really want you to improve on these 4 things. What do? We focus on the weaknesses of the employee. Well, people want to do what they're good at. According to Gallup research, one of the great things that gives them satisfaction in their jobs is doing what they do best. So how about if we stop hammering on what they're not doing well and get them into positions or restructure their jobs in such a way that they're focused on their strengths? That is incredibly beneficial. So ask them what they enjoy doing most. And once again, you're not doing this from an operational standpoint. Y'all are the volunteers. What I'm giving you here is something by which you can hold your leadership teams accountable. Are you doing this? How come we're not doing this? So within the context of jobs, we need to identify what are high-value actions. Because in many cases, a lot of our jobs are just doing busy work. And so as a leader, one of the things that I always made sure I did on my analytics teams was examine what are my high-value activities and what can I get rid of? What can I eliminate, outsource, automate, get rid of. It's a constant process. And I've taken branch managers through courses where we've listed, I say, okay, tell me the 10 activities that you spend the most time on. And they list them. And then I say, okay, now, which of those 10 activities are most beneficial to the growth of your branch? And invariably, it's 2 or 3 things. And then I say, well, how come you're not spending all your time on those 2 or 3 things? We've got to get rid of the rest so you can focus on what's important. And you can do this with positions all around the credit union. And I really like this quote down here from a CEO in California, Donna Bland. She said, we define each position's purpose. Not its job description, its purpose. Going back to those the 8 pillars, how does each position in your credit union correspond back to the direction of the credit union? And how can that job, what activities in that job are most beneficial to the members and the direction of the credit union? And so each person has those that purpose documented so they know their role and how it connects to the mission. That is super important. Not many companies can do this, or not many. Everybody can do it, not many do, I can tell you that. So incentives. Does everybody offer incentives in your credit union to employees? Does your credit union have an employee incentive plan? Okay, well, wonder what's incented. Are your core values incented? Is how each employee benefits your strategy? Is that what's incented? Or is it just, well, if you open this many accounts or this product, here's what you get for that? Is it well aligned with what you want it to do, with where you want to go as a company, right? And so what we're doing here is we're taking from your level, the volunteer level, the core values, the strategy and everything, and we're pushing it down all the way through each division, down to work teams, down to employees. And look, this takes a lot of work. You won't get here overnight. But this is thinking and acting like a champion. And that's what it takes. Unleashing your thought leaders. There are some really smart high performers in your credit union that have great ideas and they're not being put on the table. So what you can do is get 6 to 12 of them together, have them focus on a critical issue. Cross-functional team, focus on a critical issue, and give them 6 to 8 weeks to come up with a solution. Velocity, we're back to velocity, right? We're talking about velocity, the rate at which your credit union achieves its goals. And I'm giving you examples that you can take back to your credit union and discuss with your board and your senior executives, and how can we adapt these to our credit union to move at a faster rate with clearer direction. And so the last thing I want to talk about are systems. Systems help create speed. Lots of systems in your credit union. Loan systems, hiring systems, HR systems, etc. I'm going to give you an example of a system and how to think through a system and how it reacts with people and leadership. And it's a strategic marketing system. And it starts with the brand promise. The brand promise is how you want to impact your communities, your members. What impact do you want to have on them? And more specifically, looking at members holistically. So there's a credit union called Redstone Federal Credit Union. It's in Huntsville, Alabama. And as a example of looking at members holistically, they said, hey, we've got a lot of people in Huntsville who are in the military, and they come out of the military, and what do? What are their needs? Not just financial needs, but what are their needs as people? Well, they might need some job training. And so the credit union looks at ways to help them get job training. They might need a realtor or help in buying a home. The credit union facilitates that. So looking at people holistically is a great way to think about your brand promise. Whose lives will you change and how? I talked a little bit about using your data to inform you about members. So you were talking about older members, younger members. If we use our data properly, we can dissect various aspects of our membership and understand what their expectations are and what their needs are. And there are lots of different kinds of members: business owners, retirees, millennials, all kinds. One way that we can look at members is in terms of their profitability. Now, sometimes when I speak with credit unions, they get a little antsy when I talk about profitability. But you have to be profitable in order to continue operating and paying salaries and serving your various members and communities. Well, not all members are equally profitable. In fact, about 10% of your members will create 100, maybe 150% of your credit union's profits. So I recommend devising a system where you understand who those people are and where you can generate referrals from them and create retention strategies for them so they don't go unnoticed and untouched by your credit union. I talked briefly about understanding members and their needs, but in your credit union, who's responsible for gathering this information and making it actionable? So a volunteer can go back to their board and to their management team and say, hey, how do we get our member information, and what kind of member information do we get, and what do we know about them, about member profitability, and how many products they have with us, and who's responsible for gathering that information? Can we start seeing that at our board meetings? So here's an example. If your CEO says, yeah, but what will we do with it? You can say, well, there really are some simple things that we can do with it. We can look at some of our most profitable members and have a retention strategy. We can look at the next group of members, the next profitable group of members, and create strategies around them. We can also look at increasing our mortgage originations, looking at the neighborhoods where we're originating most of our home sales, most of our mortgages. We could also help business owners we can be in the business of helping business owners succeed. These are all ways in which you can carve up that information. Summing it up, being a high-velocity credit union really means a lot of discipline. It means thinking like a champion. We know that Coach Meyer and his team, they've got the leadership at the top that sets direction. We know they've got the players who provide the execution, and we know that they have the systems to help the players prepare for and then actually play in the games. That's thinking and acting like a champion. It requires a lot of passion, a lot of persistence, a real clear vision, and it requires accountability. And you all in this room, now you're equipped to take a system like this, I know it was a lot, and help and pull it apart and digest it in your board meetings and with your senior executive team and see how it might work with your credit union. And of course, as I said, if you have questions, I know we went fast. If you ever want to get on a conference call or a Skype or something like that with me where I can explain a concept that we went too fast, I'll be happy to do that. All right, well, thank you for coming to this presentation on building a high-velocity credit union. We learned that leadership, people, and systems are really integral in making your credit union be able to achieve its goals at a high rate of speed. So thank you very much.